Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Niggas don't know what to think. Thought I get money, you change. What you thought we was the same? Still stay away from them clones. Niggas better leave me alone. Talking about niggas is low. Run with niggas who don't know you. Whoa, I made that zagging when city to city. You niggas not hot in your state. If it was money to get a hit Henny, we get it and never complain. Same go for the gang. And we split it up all the same. I can't really eat, let's stay straight. Cause we go way back in the day. My day ones from back in the day. They still hang around me today. You wanna come round us, you can't. I'm rolling up loud, it's great. But mama, she bad but complain. Cause I'm too in love with my dreams. And I gotta get on the plane and go get this money with them. I draw up the plate. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang.
I get the bag with the gang. Money. Taking that Zach to the bank. Henny be all in my drink. You niggas is stupid, you think that should change? You not even hot in your gang. Ain't nothing even hot about your gang. You niggas be lying about same. Be posting them pictures of guns for the fame. Niggas just look at me different now. Say that's your man, but he a clown. Don't fuck around with the fuck arounds. Little nigga, you should cut it out. Me and my niggas take different routes. Punch a bitch nigga all in his mouth. Hold up my nigga, we different now. I need a robber, this is my style. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I get a bitch today, she probably a foreign model. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I'm with my gang today, tomorrow never promise.
OG, I draw up the plate. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang.
All right, welcome everybody. So Cliff and I didn't know what was going to happen today because we're still troubleshooting some code, and I think Cliff's going to take a stab at it, rewriting it over the weekend. But I pulled up a little video for us to respond to. Cliff and I haven't done a whole lot of reaction videos together, but we do talk about a lot of this stuff off air sometimes. So I don't know. I've always really enjoyed Holy Koolaid's content, and one of his videos popped up today on my feed. It's actually an older one, but I was like, oh, this is relevant because Cliff and I are evolutionary biologists, and I think we're the type of scientist he's talking about here when he says why scientists laugh at creationists. Sounds like us. Guilty as charged. I do in fact laugh at creationists. Oh man. All right, hang on. Something's going on here. There we go.
A while back, I was staying in the home of a Muslim friend in Texas.
The audio come through?
Oh yeah, it's not coming through Gather. I forgot.
I can listen to it on YouTube, but then I think you're gonna get.
No, that's bad. Don't do that. There we go.
A while back, I was staying in the home of a Muslim friend in Texas. He's a doctor in the Dallas area, and his wife was a PhD student at the time. We had a delightful conversation sharing our mutual frustrations about anti-vaxxers, homeopathy, young earth creationists, and alternative medicine. The one area where we differed on was the value of religion. They saw beauty in religion and found peace in it, but they didn't take every aspect of the Quran literally. I showcase this conversation simply to illustrate my recognition that in spite of the Bible Belt's affinity to radical literalism, and in spite of the plethora of Islamic locales where the multitudes froth at the mouth in salivatory anticipation of Sharia's implementation and enforcement, most of the 4 billion Christians and Muslims are moderates. The vast majority of them don't take their holy books literally, even if they claim to. If every one of them viewed their holy book the way that most view Greek mythology or Aesop's fables, as allegorical moral lessons couched in an absurd but memorable story format, then I probably wouldn't have too big of a problem with it. But the instant an otherwise mentally stable adult starts lecturing about a talking donkey, a bear-summoning bald wizard, a planet-saving wooden boat, or a water-walking wine transformer, and actually believes this nonsense, I'm not going to just nod my head and act like everything that they're saying is normal, or that.
All right, so I think this is kind of an important point for me. So I get this whole thing about moderate religion, but I really think it's allowing people to be intellectually dishonest. Because, number one, there's a huge difference between what they'll present as reasonable when they're around us, especially knowing that if they're aware that we're skeptics or non-believers, versus how they allow these things to be talked about in front of them, when they're in their services. So you might have a certain Christian in your life, for instance, who says they accept evolution and they say they accept science and all of this, but when they're in church on Sunday morning and the pastor's up there talking about, oh, wonderful God, creator, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, they're amening hallelujah. Now, which one is it? So it's like a lot of them are telling you they're not a creationist, but they're sure acting like a creationist on Sunday morning. The other thing is, cool if people want to allegorize their religion, but again, at that point, I don't think it's really your religion anymore. Because again, Aesop's fables is cool, but nobody's sitting around worshiping Aesop's fables, giving 10% of their income to the cult of Aesop's fable, praying to Aesop to heal them, hoping that Aesop will bless their marriage. Right? We don't worship narratives. We don't worship allegorical stories and metaphors. So I'm with y'all. The world would be a better place if Christians didn't take the book literally, but at the same time, what is left of this religious experience if you're just going to tell me now it's all a bunch of stories and allegories? I don't know if you had anything there, Cliff.
Well, I'll hear some more.
Okay. But yeah, so we always just say, roll the tape if you're done, or pause the tape if you want to say something.
Their insane babblings deserve respect. This is not normal. We can and should respect the individual without having to lend credence to folly. Literal interpretations of pseudoscientific texts are not without harm, especially when they ripen into the basis for rotten policy. And turning a blind eye to a festering infection only perpetuates the problem. We're told to respect people's beliefs, and that's the start of the problem, because truth still matters. Religious misinformation should be treated with the same level of facepalmery we reserve for conspiracy theories and other whack-job delusions.
But this, to me, is the true horror of religion. Okay, it allows perfectly decent and sane people to believe by the billions what only lunatics could believe on their own. Okay, if you wake up tomorrow morning thinking that saying a few Latin words over your pancakes is going to turn them into the body of Elvis Presley, okay, you have lost your mind. Okay? But if you think more or less the same thing about a cracker and the body of Jesus, you're just a Catholic.
But is religion really as crazy as conspiracy theories? Oh no, it is far worse. Grab your tinfoil and let's explore the absurdity together. The Loch Ness Monster is just a legend about a large underwater creature living in modern times. We have fossils of plesiosaurs. Sure, there's not sufficient evidence for a contemporary Nessie, but it's still within the realm of scientific plausibility. We wouldn't have to throw out gene theory or the theory of evolution to make sense of it. Bigfoot is just a large, usually blurry, bipedal ape with slightly more hair than Sacha Baron Cohen. Nothing here violates the laws of chemistry, however bizarre. Aliens, well, We know there are other habitable planets with similar conditions to Earth. We know there are hundreds of billions of galaxies with an equally mind-numbing multitude of stars and planets. We know life is possible because we're alive, and we know that space travel is possible because we've traveled into space. And everything that we know about abiogenesis and the origin of life screams that we're not the only life in this universe. Watch my series on the story of life for a more in-depth reasoning on that. It's not physically impossible that Elvis could have faked his own death, and if he did, he'd be less than a century old right now. None of these conspiracy theories violate the natural order of things and are far more plausible than the miraculous claims of religion. The virgin birth is a baseless anti-scientific assertion that spits in the face of biology and anatomy. A Jew who shrivels fig trees with incantations violates everything that we know about botany, and a divinely chosen horse-flying Arab tramples Newton's laws of motion and everything we know about gravity. These beliefs are far more ludicrous than the conspiracy theories that we treat with culture-wide disdain. Religion is conspiracy theory with a double dose of poppycock. And yet there's a double standard.
And again, quick.
Yeah, I could.
Okay, good.
So I'll start out by saying I don't, me, I take even a more hardline skeptical position on, he used a lot of we knows and
sure. Yeah.
I'm not gonna bust his balls for it, but I don't even do that. I would say we accept accept as reasonable, right? There's a whole sort of I don't want to go into it.
No, Cliff, believe it or not, I think this is a great thing to go into a little bit because we're going to be talking about this on the channel. That the class I taught with Rob was all about the nature of science, but even the class I'm teaching now, which is called Survey of Biology, it really starts with the nature of science. It starts with what is science, what is not science. And one of the brief things our students have had to read is one about the difference between belief and acceptance, right? And another one was all about exactly what you were talking about, problematic language that we use when discussing science, especially, non-professionals that careful scientists don't use. And so it is a nuance point, and you sometimes feel like you're picking on people or being a bit nitpicky. But when we're having this conversation, especially about science, it's an important distinction. So talk about what you mean by accept versus
exactly like if you tell me right now, I got to go shopping this afternoon,
right?
And I know that my prescriptions are going to be at Meijer,
right?
Right? Do I know that? No, they may have screwed them up. They've done it in the past.
Absolutely.
I'm fine saying I know that I know when I get there they're going to have my prescriptions and they're going to cost $30,
right,
give or take, whatever. I know that they're going to have milk in the fridge. Do I know that? No, maybe there's a run on milk. I don't know. I haven't read the news. Who knows? Whatever. But I'm fine with that. And I know that if I drop this thing, it's going to fall. But even that, I don't know that. I think it will. But so for me, I do this. I take the most reductionist position I could take, and that's I'm pretty damn confident that I have experiences, and then everything follows from that.
Right.
So anytime that somebody starts to do one of these precept arguments where they're like, oh, there has to be a first cause, I'm like, dude, I am so far from knowing that that's true that it's
absolutely
it's just just don't even I don't know that the universe is consistent. It appears so. I don't even know that the things I'm experiencing are what they seem to be. I don't know any of it. Anyway, So it doesn't matter. But to me, I think that the issue here is part of it is the old, good people do good things, bad people do bad things, but to get a good person to do a bad thing, you need to get him to believe a lie. I mean, usually say you need religion, right?
You need religion.
But you have to get him to believe a lie, basically, right?
Right.
And that's all you need. You just have to get them to believe a lie, and then they'll do bad things. And I think that that's kind of the core of the problem here, because if people could believe whatever they want and it had no effect on how they behaved, who cares? If it had no effect on anything, who cares? Do whatever you want.
Sure.
Right? But the fact is, you cannot I don't believe that you can have a part of your life. You know, there was this thing where an article came out and, you know, it was saying, it was a Reddit post, and the title of the post was that atheists respect atheist scientists more than they do religious scientists. But also hidden in the article was the fact that religious scientists respect religious scientists more than they respect atheist scientists. So it was a hot mess, right? It was like, well, you're choosing a specific slant here.
Right.
You know, basically people who think the way I do, I trust more.
Yeah.
But the problem is that from the standpoint of the, you know, it's in one case somebody's accepting something they can't provide defense for. In the other case, they're just saying, I don't accept that. And so inherently, one of them is just a stronger position than the other. I don't know how to get away from that. It's like it's very unfortunate if you're religious, but I don't know how to get away from that.
I totally agree. The other thing is, so can you talk a little bit about the difference between acceptance versus belief here? Because I think that's a key thing, because that's constantly coming up, and I think it has to do with certain the deal.
Yeah. Let's put one end of like, I don't know, mate, I don't know. That's one end of the extreme.
Right.
And then the other end of the extreme is I know that I know that I know that I know.
Right.
So those are the two extremes, right? And I know that I know. And the thing is that we don't have to take, you know, if you start like I thought about this a lot, and I will you know, happily credit Mr. Dawkins, not the scientist, but Mr. Darth Dawkins, for forcing me to analyze my own worldview. And my worldview basically
Cliff, Darth Dawkins is a bigger influence on you than Richard Dawkins.
No, that's not true.
I was about to say, I'm about to pull. Okay. This one thing. Okay. All right.
No, because the thing is, the argument that he makes is if you don't have a foundation, then what are you building on? And I had to contend with that. I had to sort of, I took that
wrestle
on
with
face
it.
value.
Sure.
To say, well, I don't, but how am I operating? Like, how is it that I am able to operate?
Wow, Cliff, that's really interesting, because I think that it's so annoying when they do that, because, you know, I always call it kind of like the white boy philosophy game, and they're so upset that, you know, it doesn't stop you in the tracks. Like, it doesn't, you know, they talk about it like, how dare you wake up in the morning without a metaphysical foundation to ultimately base your reality. But to your credit, you said, you know what? Let's go there. I'll go ahead and do it. I'll play this game.
It's legit.
It's a legit question. I'll play it. Yeah. All right.
Absolutely legit. I have to, if I want to be honest with myself. And, you know, luckily for me, I had some people around. I had been talking sort of, you know, deep philosophy for a while with some folks. And so I kind of was in that headspace. And I think that was why I found those arguments so interesting, because they were just so difficult to deal with. You know, on their face, you just go, look, you're making a bunch of assumptions. Right. It's like, yeah, okay, but that doesn't mean you're wrong, right? So at the end of the day, what I came up with was this idea that I really the term that I've been introduced to is an incorrigible fact. And it's a fact that I am not able to refute, right? Like, I have to believe it because I really cannot see a way that I can refute it.
Right.
And that is that I have experiences, right? It's kind of like I think, therefore I am, but it's even weaker. It's just I experience, therefore there's something experiencing. Right? Like, I am the subject of a verb, therefore I'm a noun.
Right.
But even that is like, it's wrapped in language, right? So like the fact that I can't conceive of it being a different way doesn't mean I'm necessarily right, but I accept that as true because I really can't conceive of how it can't be true.
Absolutely. All right. So I found something to share. and it's from our course materials. But it's a quote from Haiti, and he says, saying that scientists, quote, believe their results suggest falsely that their acceptance is not based on evidence, but is based somehow on faith. Yet again, it is about the quality of the evidence. Scientists accept their results as the best explanation of the problem that we have at present, but we recognize that our findings are subject to reevaluation as new evidence comes to light. This is a problem because scientists themselves often use the word believe when discussing their results. It is just sloppy diction. They would not say that their conclusions are a matter of faith rather than of evidence. Instead of saying many scientists believe or some scientists think, it is more productive to talk about the evidence. And this whole thing is about belief versus acceptance. And the main point they make here is that the extinction is that acceptance is held to be more under voluntary control than belief. So here's the example. You may see your friend that has leaned a ladder against a roof. She states that the ladder is safe to climb, and you believe her. Thus, you have established a belief in the safe ladder claim. However, as you approach the ladder, your empirical nature takes over. Upon close inspection, that is data gathering by considering what the ladder is made of, by pushing and pulling on the ladder, and by observing the surface upon which it is placed, you conclude that the ladder is far too wobbly and weak to climb, and therefore no longer accept the claim that it is safe. In fact, the evidence available is grounds for rejecting the safe ladder claim outright. In this case, acceptance requires a voluntary investigation into a claim before we accept or reject it. And that part really hit me because I feel like so many people are not doing that. They're not doing the voluntary investigation of the evidence. But go ahead.
I rail against the belief versus accept, and the faith. Like people bring up faith a lot, trying to say, well, faith, we should use faith to, like we can use trust in the one case.
Trust and confidence and yeah.
Because faith is just trust without evidence. And I'm like, these words, I mean, this is just linguistics. And if you look it up, it depends which dictionary you pick up. And for some dictionaries, it's like, for some dictionaries, it's they'll have both definitions. So I'm like, I think you have to get into what it is you mean. But I think you can say like, and then of course, people will say, I was just listening to a moronic debate yesterday that was somebody saying, oh, well, my personal experiences are my evidence. And then they're like, well, what are your personal experiences? And they're like voices in their head. And they're like, do they accurately predict things? Do they do anything that you can test that you couldn't just do yourself? And the answer is, after a lot of talking, no. It's like, no, it's not. And so you're just like, okay, well, so then no, you don't have good evidence. Like if you want to claim anything, if you want to say, that the moon being in the sky is evidence that my car will start in the morning. I mean, I guess so. It's just not good evidence. It has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. All right.
And sometimes things seem to be related, but they're not.
Absolutely. And this also reminded me of what you said. So this is all about the process of science. And a couple of things that came up. It's not a process that attempts to prove things wrong. It's not a process that seeks the truth or facts. It's not a process that produces certainty or absolute facts. So it was kind of interesting that some of those things is what they were really trying to get at, like, is that we don't talk about certainties and there's a reason. And they said the very things you said, where they were saying, like, scientists don't use proof when they're talking about things, and there's a reason they don't. But it was really interesting that you picked up on that right away. What do you think about the idea that in a way it's more sinister than what's going on with conspiracy theory claims? I think for two reasons. Yeah, I think you got the probability aspect that's problematic that he highlighted, but again, you've got the behavioral aspect that you touched on. I don't think it's possible to believe this without it motivating your behavior. And then when it's when it's something like religion, which a lot of people, if you ask them honestly, they'll at least try to tell you it's the core of who they are. It's the fabric of their identity. Then you are acting on it, and you're acting on it in almost every area of your life.
Let me give you another one. I don't know if I came up with this or if I heard it somewhere and it just stuck with me, but it's, if you can believe any one thing on faith alone, you can believe anything at all on faith alone.
Yes.
Right?
If you can believe anything on faith, you can believe everything on faith.
Yeah. If you can believe any one thing, you can believe anything at all. Like that to me, that's the specific wording, because all it takes is like one thing, right? Where you say, oh, but I take that on faith. I take, how do you know God exists? Oh, I don't, but I take it on faith.
Right.
Well, so you're taking something that you just acknowledge you do not have evidence for.
Yeah.
And now you're like, yeah, and I'm going to extend, and what can't, so if you're saying I have a pathway to truth or to acceptance, right, to those things that I accept as true versus those things that I can't accept as true, then you could apply, you basically are telling me that your epistemology has a giant hole in it.
Right.
You're going to allow things in that should never be able to get in. The
thing I'm sitting here thinking is, never was a fool made with misplaced beliefs in gods or girlfriends. Like, it's the same thing. Like, you just, we see her around town, but you're going to take it off faith she's not running around on you. It's the same shit. It's like we can all see the evidence to the contrary, but all right. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll roll a tape. This is fun.
Standard. We hold conspiracy theories with contempt because they represent belief without evidence, endowing their proponents with an unspoken badge of credulity. But religion too cherishes belief without evidence under the revered moniker faith. Why does it get a pass? How come our collective disdain doesn't scale with the absurdity? Religion should carry double the cost in social capital and be accompanied with proportionally more mockery than the doses we reserve for conspiracy theorists. Most of the people touting these beliefs have had them hammered into them so many times from a young age by people they trust, and they've never been taught to think critically. They're otherwise intelligent, but have been repeatedly told that doubt is evil. Doubt isn't evil. Doubt is essential to knowing truth and is quintessential in every other area of life. When we laugh at odd, irrational beliefs, we're not insulting the poor sheep who bought into them. We're merely humorously baffled by the absurdity of the proposition. But just as every joke ages with repetition, religion has lost its novelty and subsequently its humor. Religion is the normalization of insanity. Ingrain it in a child before they've developed a sense of humor and they'll never learn to laugh. But encounter any sufficiently divergent new religion for the first time as an adult, and you'll laugh your dumbfounded butt off. If you're religious and you feel personally offended, I want you to know that when I poke fun at your religion, I'm not mocking you. I'm simply surfacing the humor that I missed as a child, seeing the insanity for the first time. I'm mocking what you've been indoctrinated into believing so that you can see just how ridiculous it is and hopefully reevaluate your position, because you care about the pursuit of truth. So you can open your life up to the wonders of reality. When I was a freshman in college, I believed that the government was hiding aliens at Area 51, and my roommates thoroughly mocked me for it, showing me just how ridiculous the idea was. And in retrospect, I'm grateful that they did. In order to find truth, our beliefs should be constantly re-examined and held to scrutiny. And if any...
I want to tell you guys a really important transformative moment I had in my pursuit of truth as a young person. It's going to tie a lot of things together for people. But I was actually, as a teenager, really anti-drug. And, in high school, we had some, kids in our class. I remember, the boys, especially even, maybe we were, freshman year even, smoking weed or whatever it was. And I would just make fun of them. Have fun being a heroin addict, loser. I was that Christian arrogant kid. And then, I remember we had a DARE program, and that was not a program, but one of the officers come in and do the whole deal. And I was like, that didn't help anybody. And then when some of my friends started using pot, I was then I was like really worried about it. And so what I thought was, if I did my research on it and then I figured out how bad it was, I would be better able to get through to my friends and get them to stop smoking pot than the teachers and the DARE guy was. And it was like one of the first times in my life I remember just how flat out wrong I was, right? It was like I actually looked into shit. And I remember finding NORML's website, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, and reading all this stuff. And I was like, holy shit. Like, it was really, really wrong about that. So I think that was like one of the earlier experiences I had that humbled me, but also gave me a passion for doing the research and figuring out what's up, you know? All right, here we go.
Belief is held too sacred to scrutinize? That's exactly when it needs to be satirized. People deserve respect. Beliefs don't. So until you can demonstrably prove that a talking snake convinced a dirt man and a rib woman to eat a knowledge apple and that everything we know about physics, chemistry, and biology is wrong, I'm gonna give you the crazy look and poke fun at your beliefs till the cows come home. And if the rest of planet Earth grew up enough to understand the joke and start laughing in unison, maybe, just maybe, we could build a more rational world where the foundations of public policy aren't baloney. What's up, skeptics? Thomas Westbrook here. Are you new to atheism? Making sense of the world after a recent worldview shift can be really hard, and there's a huge irrational stigma against atheists that can be difficult to navigate alone. So I've created a free guide just for you. It's a compilation of 13 things that I learned in my first year as an atheist. You can download it absolutely free today at holykoolaid.com/guide. I'll put a link.
That's crazy. Link in the description. Y'all already know how it works. That's wild, man. All right, that was really cool. Glad we got to do that. But yeah, go ahead.
It's just, to me, it's all about the idea that you don't know anything, and two, you only accept things when you have a reason to accept them. And then the rest, you leave it you just leave it undefined. And there are times in your life where there's a choice in front of you. Like, I'm sitting at the restaurant and I gotta pick dinner, and I've never ordered from this restaurant, and I don't know if they make a better butter chicken or chicken tikka masala, so I'm just gonna have to pick one.
Right.
Yeah. Even to make that choice, like, I picked the chicken tikka masala, right? Because if an Indian restaurant doesn't know how to make a chicken tikka masala, they're probably not going to know how to make anything.
Right.
So before I start ordering their local specialty, I'm going to, take the baseline. But right, so even there, like, I have a reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
Choice,
Absolutely.
But if someone told me it's really good, well, maybe I'll skip that and go right to the korma. But
and the funny thing is, it was scientific. Right? Like, sorry, just to say that it's not incidental that you go with that, the tikka masala is the baseline, because that's what's been established. You don't need labs and a research and a National Science Foundation grant, right? To just people know over repeated experiences.
It's on every menu.
It's on every menu.
Every other dish, I've been to some place that doesn't have it, but it's on every menu.
Right.
You know they're going to have it.
Yeah.
And you know what it's supposed to be, and they know what it's supposed to be, and they know if they're hitting the marker.
Right.
But that's all a distraction.
Sure, go ahead.
The point is that it's like, but even then, like, I don't know that that's going to be the best, right? Do I want the steak or the salad? Do I want the this or do I want the onion soup, or do I want the split pea soup? I don't know which one's going to be better. And just because I picked one doesn't indicate that I know, right? I have to buy a car. So I do my research. I try to make the best decision. I buy the car. Does that mean I know that was the right choice? No, it was the best choice for the information at hand.
Right.
Which is the same thing as any it's like any theory, right? It's the best explanation with the information at hand.
Yeah. And we'll do we'll do a proper episode on the whole metaphysics is garbage thing. Probably do like a evening stream or like one of those Skeptic Haven episodes or something.
I gotta stand on street corners with a sign that says metaphysics is garbage.
But this is part of what you're getting at, right? The impracticality of challenging, the basis of your reality. And here's the thing that we should tie it to with the sort of conversation of, why scientists make fun of creationists. How dare you challenge the basis of our reality, right? And then be the same people who want to ignore the most well-supported theories we have. Like you want to betray the most solid foundations we can find in a world where you're supposedly so concerned that we don't have a proper basis for our reality. Well, then you want to make sure we double down on what we can objectively verify.
Right.
And then on top of that, they want to replace it with the reality we certainly can't understand the basis of. So it's just awful.
Right. That's the bit there. It's the replacement. It's the what you hear over and over and over again is people saying, look, you're saying I don't know. At least my understanding of the universe, right? As a religious person who says God is the cause of all things, or whatever it is that you think is the cause of all things,
right?
At least I have an explanation. And you're like, you don't have an explanation. You have a hypothesis.
Absolutely.
Right? I have many hypotheses. One of them is your God did it. You are absolutely right. And everything is exactly the way that you say it is. And he has some mysterious reason, right?
Right.
Because even they will say, oh, why does God, well, God moves in mysterious ways. Who knows? Yes, so you could be right.
Yes.
But why? Why should I accept that?
Right.
It could be anything. Like any completely untestable hypothesis is equally improbable. They're
absolutely
all equally improbable because we do not know. We have no way to measure a probability.
Yes.
So there's no even, people say, oh, what do you think the odds are that God exists? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
If he does, it's 100%. If he doesn't, it's 0.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Absolutely. And on my channel, we'll revisit more about this whole process of science, nature science stuff. I think it's really important. But one of the things that the document I pulled up briefly highlighted is that science is a process, and it's all about providing explanations. Like you said, again, a very choice word from a real scientist, right? And one of the things that right, because that's different than saying, I found the truth, or I found the ultimate absolute reality. It's like, no, I found an explanation of something, right? And that something is, it provides us with natural explanations of natural phenomena. So it's really interesting that all these apologists, essentially, like I said, they want to curl up in bed at night with their science teddy bear. Oh, I love science, I love science, I love science, I love science, and never acknowledge the fact that if you love science that much, I think you would understand it provides natural explanation of natural phenomena, and then you want to supplant it with your supernatural worldview. That doesn't sound like love of science to me.
Yeah, I mean, but you have to, if you have love of science, you have to love, I don't know.
That's another thing, right? And again, it doesn't sound like they really love that part. They don't sound like they're down for the real science. Like,
and you have to accept the universe for what it is, and acknowledge that it may not be what you want. Sorry.
man, it's crazy because
if the number of if God is real, if God has the power he has, then couldn't he do X? And you're like, yeah, he totally could. And if he is real and he has those powers, then I guess it's the way you said it.
Case.
Well, why would I accept that he is and he does? Like, well, what? This makes no sense.
It's weird because, we joke and Uncle Bobby's always saying, there's no such thing as sin, grow the fuck up. Jesus didn't die for sin, grow the fuck up. But what you're describing is a way in which actually the scientific mindset requires a certain degree of emotional maturity to approach it genuinely, right? Because what you're describing is stuff that people seem to wrestle with personally, right? It's not just about sitting in a chemistry class. It's about literally accepting what you said, that you got to accept I don't know, and you've got to accept the world as it is, and you got to, and it requires some growing up.
Emotional maturity.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I am a poster child for emotional.
Sure,
maturity.
but there's a certain degree of which that you know what I mean, that you have to.
I think I do it by logical detachment.
Right, that's one way of getting you at least apparently a sufficient level, right? Like you don't have to be the most emotionally mature person, but you gotta get over certain things. You've got to really grapple with certain things and learn that you know what, you can still eat and sleep and poop and everything's gonna be okay, even though you had to put your big boy pants on.
I would love if I could have a conversation with someone like Dr. Dawkins and I could talk to him and say, look, abandon your whole just for a minute, abandon everything you think you know, and look at the world the way I do, which is completely subjective. You start with yourself. You start with the realization that you exist, assuming that you have a mental process, right? Like I don't know that you exist, but like I'm going to assume, I'm going to accept for a minute that you're a person and that you have an internal process like I do. And so like, okay, so you have that. And now, okay, what can we do? And for a while, I went back. I kept going to lower and lower levels. I was like, oh, well, the world must exist because I interact with the world. And it was like, well, yeah, but I interact with the world through sensing.
Right.
And then I think I'm taking actions that affect the world. And I think it's changing my senses in such a way that it reflects the change that I've made, right? And I describe these experiments like I could tell you, like, oh, go in my office, write an X on the whiteboard, right? And then I could turn to Jory and say, Jory, go in the office and read whatever's written on the whiteboard and come back and tell me what it is. And Jory would go in the office and he'd come back and say, there's an X written on the whiteboard. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So the whiteboard must be real. Right. Jay must be real. Joy must be real, right? Right? But the fact of the matter is, you could not exist. The whiteboard could not exist. I could be just making up the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't know the difference.
Sure.
Now you could say that that would require some kind of subconsciousness to maintain that reality, right? And then you could say, well, my consciousness is like the agent in the greater universe, which is the subconscious created universe. And in that case, well, actually, then the subconscious created universe is real. Right. And it is separate from the consciousness because the consciousness isn't aware of it. But it doesn't matter. The point is that I still don't know the nature of reality, and I cannot know it from my senses. And what is Plato had the shadow puppet thing?
I don't know.
I think it's either Aristotle or Plato. It's one of the two. He basically talked about the fact that you've got like these guys in a cave. You're standing outside the cave and there's some guys in the cave and you can't see them, but there's a fire and you see the shadows on the wall and you hear the sounds. And so you think that there's like a crowd of soldiers in there with spears or whatever. But it could just be shadow puppets. It could be one guy making sounds with shadow puppets. Water wheel, and some
right.
And you don't know because what you're seeing, you think is a bunch of guys standing around a fire, but what it is in reality, all you're seeing is a shadow. Right. And so like all I'm doing is I'm getting sensory inputs and like that's it. That's all I get. And then I think I'm doing stuff. I think I'm moving my hand. I think I'm talking. Right. But I don't know that I actually am. But then the question becomes, right, you go to the crossword puzzle analogy. And you say, well, yeah, but when I interact with the universe, when I do the thing that I think is interacting with the universe, it really seems to work.
Yeah, and the crossword puzzles, again, as you start putting more and more of the pieces together, you'd have to take more and more pieces of him apart.
You have to be wrong. You'd have to be really, really, really wrong.
Right. So like when you fill in the first word, I
put it a step too soon. I put it a step too soon because the first thing is I'm having these perceptions of the universe. Right. And I take these things that I think are actions that I think change the universe, and the universe seems to change in the way that I would expect. Right. And it all seems to behave, this input-output system seems to behave. And so then the question becomes, well, why should I assume that it's not? Right?
100%.
Why would it be reasonable
100%.
to assume that it's not 100%. The real world 100%. And it's not, that this isn't the mouse and this isn't the keyboard? Why should I assume that these things
if we take this to trial, we're way beyond a reasonable doubt. We're way beyond that.
At this point, I say, look, I don't know it. And I could be proven wrong. And if you prove me wrong, I'm not going to be surprised.
Yes.
Right? I'm not going to be shocked. I'm going to go,
yes.
Oh, well, that's really interesting. I didn't think that was going to be the case.
Yes.
But, like, I totally know I could have it all wrong. But now I say, well, I accept it. I don't know it. I don't have faith in it. Right. But I accept it now. But now, once I accept it, now I can start doing science. Now I can start doing hypothesis testing. How steep a slope can I put this mouse on before it slides down the slope? You know, how cold does it have to be before the rain is snow? Right. All these questions.
Right.
I could do all this science. And now we get into the crossword puzzle. So now the thing is, the crossword puzzle is already based on a supposition that what I experience is real.
Yes.
But I'm already out on a limb.
Yes.
Right? Like, I'm already away from truth because I've gotten away from pure experience.
Yes.
And so, like, I accepted the crossword puzzle, but it's not a big supposition to say that what I experience is real. As you said, it's certainly within reasonable doubt.
Right.
You know, it's within reasonable things to accept. I think any rational person would accept that. But then the crossword puzzle does come into play. And you say, look, what is the probability that I have this many things figured out, and they interleave so perfectly,
right,
that I have it wrong, right? That I have some mistake and the whole thing is wrong. And it could be that the whole thing is wrong. You have some base assumption wrong, and everything is wrong.
Right.
Right. I mean, great comedies are based on, like, a comedy of errors. Is like a thing occurs,
yes,
and a rational person would think it's this, and then another thing occurs. But in the context of the first thing,
it's a fucked up ass game of telephone where the message was wrong to begin with.
But everything is rational, and at the end it gets unwound, and you realize that, like, there was like one, he heard one word wrong in the first sentence in the first scene, and like everything else, right, it just unravels, right? And that would be the crossword puzzle unraveling. But we have so much now with so many disciplines of science that it just seems like, come on, it's not reasonable to
not reasonable. That's where I'm getting with it, is that it's irrational.
As you get out to the edge, last thought, as you get out to the edge of the crossword and you get into those not well supported, you get to the parts of the crossword where you don't have filled in, you have certain lines filled in. Well, on those lines, you say, well, I don't know, this could be right, this could be wrong. And for me, the two of those are quantum mechanics and the origin of the universe. Those are the two places that I can identify as way out at the edge. And hey, guess what? Cranks go to quantum mechanics and creationists go to the origin of the universe. Why? Because that's where they can put up a fight.
I'm with it. That's it. That's the killer. That's the killer. I love it. I got to get out of here. I got a 2:15 with Mike. But Cliff, this was so fun, man. This is definitely what we should do when we hit a little snag in the schedule or have a little downtime. But Monday we'll be right back at Made Work. Appreciate you so much, and we'll see you on the other side of the weekend.
All right,
later on, man. All right, gang. Like I said, I have a meeting, but come hang out and gather. We'll live again. I think we'll probably respond to Rebekah's new video. I can't leave that raggedy bitch alone. All right, in the name of the Darwin, the Dawkins, and the Christopher Hitchens, science bless y'all. We'll see you at the ranch. Poof.
Why she wanna leave me alone? Saying all I do is wrong. No rights when they been left turns. Playing that she gotta let it burn. Saying that the hell's not a home. Sunshine cause you heard it all before. Sometimes she don't wanna be alone. Most times she don't want me gone. She don't know I try my all. She don't know I sprung in the sun, but I'm going in the winter, so we good to the fall. Remember how I told you I get it and I win, now I'm got it.